talking to clients, when all of us are talking to clients, I know we get asked a lot, you're about to buy investment property for me. What research are you guys looking at? What are the most important things that you're looking for?
Yeah, good question. So when we do research, many years ago we came across a property cycle, and very, very few people understand this cycle. And the cycle's been going on over 400 years in the UK, over 200 years in the US, and the only thing that's upset the cycles have been the world wars and the pandemic. So at a macro level, we look at what's going on around the world globally, and this property cycle, I won't go into it too greatly, but it on average it's 18.6 years, 17 to 20 years is a cycle, and typically what that does is 7 years up, there's a year and a half down sideways, 7 years up, then 4 years down. So what we've done is overlay that cycle with how each capital city unfolds here locally. Okay, so and typically, and I can explain more for our clients that want to give us a call, but essentially Melbourne and Sydney take the gains in the first 7 years, and then the smaller capital cities take the gains in the second 7 years. So we look at that and assess where we're going to be buying at a national level. Of course, then we look at other fundamental data such as economy, the strength of the economy. Actually, the CommSec state-of-state reports is a really good place to source data. And what the CommSec state-of-state reports shows you is the strength of each state's performance. Now, there's economic strength overall, and then there's the speed and the growth that that state is undertaking. So, to give you an example, going back 7 odd years ago now, when we started placing a lot of clients into Brisbane, people came to us and said, "Hey, why would you buy in Brisbane? It floods, it never grows."
Yep.
Well, the CommSec state-of-state reports back then said Queensland was the fastest growing state, but it was number 5th overall economically. So its economic strength was about 5th overall. Today, interestingly, Queensland is the number 1 most economic, the strongest economic state. It jostles with South Australia. But look what happened to property prices over that period. That rising tide floats all boats. So we get our data from various different sources, the banks, ABS, Australian Property Monitors, CoreLogic, to identify where we should be buying at a macro level. And then at a micro level, we look at what suburbs we're going into. So we look at supply and demand, vacancy rates, demographic shifts. But one of the most important things that we look at when buying is demographic socioeconomic profiles of residents within an area. So we like to go into suburbs where there's people with good, strong incomes, because they can spend more on rent and property prices. It's not snobbery. We like quality over quantity. So we prefer to buy one good asset in a premium location relative to our client's budget, rather than 2 cheaper properties in lower socioeconomic suburbs. So the cycle obviously is something that we look at a macro level, and then the micro level we look at the various different factors. Things like cafes, restaurants, schools. NAPLAN's a big thing.
Yeah.
NAPLAN's a huge thing at the moment. People want to buy in suburbs where there's good schools. And
catchment zones are really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, we've seen that. I know, NAPLAN's, just completely reshaped the pricing and I've seen this over decades. I grew up in Melbourne in a pretty middle-class brick veneer suburb of Melbourne called Mount Waverley, and neighbouring suburb Glen Waverley had a well-regarded high school. This is when the testing and the NAPLANs first came in. In fact, I think it was even before that, where it had a strong reputation, had delivered good results.
Yep.
And Mount Waverley was the same. And over a course of 20 years, there was particularly, there were certain ethnic groups and groups of people were just piled into these suburbs, and prices went through the roof because they all effectively, how they saw it was they were getting a private school education.
That's right.
For free. So those, I mean, the whole NAPLAN element has just been, as it, pertains to data, we've seen that completely reshape prices in a whole range of suburbs around the country.
And then, of course, we look at the property level research. So obviously things that we look for when buying properties: level block, no easements, good quality structural property itself. Typically if we're looking for houses, double brick, no covenants over the land. We knock on the neighbours' doors left and right and across the road just to make sure that there's going to be no one, we're not buying next to some bad neighbours.
It does happen.
And it does happen.
It's risky. I know I've heard anecdotally through others of people that have had, nightmare stories. So it's a really important element.
And if anyone's going to give you an unvarnished outlook as to what's happening in that suburb, all you have to do is knock on a neighbour's door and just say, I represent a buyer. Yeah. And straight away, because they're so nosy, they want to know. So if you ask them any questions, if they're not happy or they don't like it, they'll tell you straight away.
Yeah. And I'm really surprised when people go and spend, a couple of $1 million on their home. They don't know who they're going to be living next to.
No.
They walk into this
until
property.
They move in.
They have, 15 minutes in, it looks great, and they make an offer on that property. They don't do a huge amount of research. I mean, we look into fire and flood reports, police checks, development application checks. Make sure that there's no one going to be building next to you, or there's not a, the property next door is going to be knocked down and a duplex is going to be built next door. That's the level of research that we undertake when looking at property for our clients.